it something that you still actually enjoy seeing yourself on screen? How many times have you actually seen the film, and how many times have you seen it with the audience?
Well, is this thing on?
Yeah.
I've seen it probably, how many, 2 or 3 times with an audience?
Yeah.
And like probably 150 times all on my own, and I freeze it at that bit where I've got the gold face and the grey hair, and I've not really watched the rest of it very much, because that scene kind of arrests me, you know.
Mitch, the origin of Showpiece is interesting because it kind of grows out of a previous collaboration that you worked on. Can you tell us a little bit about how it came about, kind of what the origins of the film was?
Me or you?
You start.
I'll start. So, we started collaborating about 8 years ago on a project called Unearthing. And then from there, our sort of like creative relationship, kind of carried on. And then Alan asked me to do a photo shoot for his ill-fated but beautiful Dodge and Logic fanzine on a burlesque shoot. So I did that, and then it was very successful. Alan was one of the characters in this set of photographs as well. I then went round to his house and said, "This is really work. What I'd like to do is a 2-minute showreel piece based on the photo shoot." At that moment, foolishly, he suggested that he'd actually write the screenplay. And that's where Jimmy's End was born.
Yeah, I just say these things often for effect. And it just sounds, you know, he was just talking about, just 10 minutes for my show reel. I thought, well, 10 minutes. How long can that possibly take? And,
4 years.
Yeah, and counting. And I thought it would be, and I mean, actually, just writing something, that is quite easy. And I think I did it. I know we like to tell people that I worked on it for months and months, but it was like sort of an afternoon or something like that. And but then I'd never actually done a film before, so it was all completely hypothetical. Well, I'd done the one with Malcolm McLaren, but that never happened. So I'd been living in a kind of an ideal dream world, where I could just imagine all these films and how great they'd be if they got made, and they never got made. But now this was a new process, and it kind of grew from there. We went through various people trying to get it made because we were frankly unpleasant. I think I would. We were saying, no, you're not getting any rights to any of this. No, we keep all of those, and you don't get any editorial control, and
No second draft.
no, there isn't a second draft because that would be really tedious, and so you can imagine we weren't getting people snapping us up, but eventually, we got there with the help of the general public and a lot of other wonderful individuals.
Because the film we've seen today is an anthology of 3 of the shorts, but the show, which is the wider project, you've made 5 shorts so far, which are available as a box set with other things. But the actual kind of the funding and how each of those shorts came about has been quite different, hasn't it? It's not, it wasn't one person funding all of it.
No, it all started with obviously Jimmy's End. And we'd gone to see film 4, and they were very excited along with Warp. And then the new government came in and they cut all arts funding, so that just stopped immediately. It was at that point that we were then becoming frustrated. That Lex Records, who we'd put Unearthing out with, stepped in and said, look, we'll fund a short. So Alan went away and wrote Act of Faith, which was supposed to be a trailer for Jimmy's End. They funded that, and after that was seen, the Creators Project came on board and gave us 100,000 to make Jimmy's End. And then when we'd seen that, we decided we really want to make This Heavy Heart, which is the final in the shorts. And then we went to Kickstarter, and thankfully we got funded through that.
I mean, Alan, it's a well-documented fact that you've been unhappy with previous film adaptations of your work. What was the decision to actually move into film yourself? Was it a medium that did it surprise you about how you found working with it, or do you kind of have a different feel now that you've been involved in the filmmaking thing kind of firsthand?
I've been told that I did read a review that said that I was the human avatar of Grumpy Cat. You're all laughing, aren't you? Because you know what Grumpy Cat is. I'm assuming it's a kind of a cat that's sort of, my feelings about films, if you can call them that were made with my work, I don't like adaptations generally. There's always going to be a couple of things that will go against that. There'll be exceptions, but no exceptions in any of the films that have been made of my work. But that doesn't mean that I don't like film. It's a great medium, you know. Admittedly, I don't see a lot of film these days. Because, well, actually, when they went over to digital, on an obscure point of principle, which I actually can't remember now, I decided that I was going to stick with analogue, so it's just a dead television in the corner of the room. But this is true. And, but I do have a great love for sort of cheap cinema. I think that there's a direct equation that if you've got money, then you don't really need any imagination. And if you've got imagination, you don't really need that much money. So we decided to put that principle to the test. The main thing that it differs from comics in is that as a comic writer, you can be kind of sociopathic, because all of the people that you're putting through all of these terrible, terrible situations, they are made out of paper. We assume that they don't have feelings like normal three-dimensional human beings, you know. And I mean, the first time that was put to the test was when we made Act of Faith. I've met Siobhan, and she's a really nice young woman, and I really don't want to see her choking in a wardrobe because of something that I've written. He told me it wasn't real, but I wasn't convinced. You know, it's. I mean, by the time we got to His Heavy Heart, and there was poor Daryl sort of sitting there bleeding from the mouth in actual physical pain. You know, I was hard-hearted by that point. I'd become jaded, just like all the other people in the film industry.
So that leads me very nicely on to a question for Siobhan about kind of having horrible things done to you. How did you become involved in the project? And the role obviously requires you to display vulnerability, kind of physically, sexually and emotionally. So how difficult was it to get into that character, and how difficult was it to step out of that character after the shooting?
Well, first off, I first got involved because one of the first films that I did was a big French film, and for the film promotion, Mitch took a whole load of photos of me for that, some beautiful photos for a magazine, and we became really good friends. And so Mitch and I did a couple more shoots together, and then about 4 years ago, Mitch, I got an email from Mitch, and he's just like, I'm working with Alan Moore on this short, and we'd love you to play Faith, his character, if you're up for it. And I was like, yes, you know. And I was a massive Alan Moore fan, and I was already a massive Mitch fan, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me. Yeah, you do, very well, and in Chardonnay too. And yeah, so I read the script, and because obviously it was Jimmy's End first, so I read Jimmy's End and I was like, this is, yeah, fantastic, I'd love to work with them. And then we had to shoot Act of Faith first, which I loved. I mean, it's a real gift of a piece for an actress to get like that. So you asked me how I got into it and to kind of the revealing nature. I mean, we rehearsed together a lot, actually. We rehearsed in my flat. Mitch came over. Obviously not all the unrolling scenes, guys. But I kind of rehearsed it like you would a theatre piece, basically, and theatre is my main love, so I just delved into Faith's very interesting personality and side, and then I didn't find it hard to play the scene because for my money she was there by herself and these were her choices and her actions, so you know it was harder for everyone else in the room.
Apart from Alan, who wasn't
there. He just felt guilty afterwards. So yeah.
Thank you. Mitch, just going back to you. You're talking there about working together initially kind of on a project where you were a photographer, and that's kind of predominantly what you're known for. How did the transition come to becoming a filmmaker? And were you nervous about kind of doing, you know, being a filmmaker for short showpieces, working with Alan?
We're certainly not working with Alan because we've known each other for 30 years, and we've been working on the Unearthing project together and working with Dodge and Logic, so that wasn't an issue at all. I'd made loads of pop videos, so I was familiar with making sort of like, or capturing footage, you know, of motion. But with regards to the actual directing, that's just something, by the time we got to His Heavy Heart especially, I kind of figured out what I was doing. At the beginning it was, let's just capture this, and it is something, you know, that comes bit by bit, but then you have to start to realise that you need to trust the actors, whereas when I'm taking photographs, you just kind of control everything. But one thing I learned about directing is you have to trust them. They know the character, you know, you've had the conversations before, and if you just empower people to give you the performance, then that in itself makes your life much easier as a director. So no, it wasn't that difficult, to be perfectly honest. And also because I didn't know what I was getting into, I couldn't be that panicked. I mean, when we got to Jimmy's End and there was like 50 crew, 45 cast, at that point I had a moment thinking, fuck, really? I didn't even know what a script supervisor was, but I found out pretty quickly shortly afterwards. But no, it was just good fun. It's been a great process.
Darren, moving on to you. Firstly, kind of what drew you to the character of James and Jimmy? Obviously, when we first meet him, he's quite an unpleasant character. But by His Heavy Heart, you actually become quite sympathetic towards him. How did you approach playing this duality, this kind of character, and having to show both the unpleasant side and then the kind of vulnerable side?
We're all many things, aren't we? And I didn't feel like I was a different person in Jimmy's End. I thought I was just that person who is lost and doesn't know where he is, who becomes frightened, who just gets more and more terrified, and that's it. I don't kind of think that he was a bad person. He's just like anybody else. I mean, there was a thing that we said that he'd lift off women a lot. He was a chancer. It's funny that I got picked for this, didn't you? You saw a picture of me. And there was a picture that you'd seen where I had this accident where I nearly blew my finger off on stage with a pistol. And it got to the news. And there was a picture of me, like mid sort of Shakespeare. And you two said, him, let's get him. And I think it was something about my eyes. I didn't know that I would have to go through the same kind of pain again. You know, and so it was all a kind of chance thing that happened. I've never really thought too much about it, really. I'm not. I've just tried to depict what was in the script that was needed.
Could I ask a question? I mean, like, with regard to a lot of the characters, but particularly with James, we've called this overall project The Show because, well, it hopefully will be, but also I've tried to make it work upon at least like, 2 levels. And so it's also about the show in the sense of the reveal. So with Act of Faith, you've got a little self-contained scene which seems fairly self-explanatory, even though you don't know anything about who Faith is or what her background is. With Jimmy's End, you have got somebody who seems a bit louche, not necessarily a bad man, just somebody who perhaps goes out drinking perhaps a little bit much. By the time we get to his heavy heart, there are suggestions that James has been involved in something very, very bad indeed. However, I would point out that those suggestions are being made by a gigantic clown with a kind of an Anubis hat on. So, how much can we really trust people like that? So basically, we don't want, a lot of this is going to be pulling back to show a bigger picture, and that includes a bigger picture of the characters. So what I'm saying is, don't judge Daryl harshly just because of his heavy heart. You know, he might be a much nicer guy than that.
Thank you.
Actually, just turning to you, Alan, especially like your character in the film, it is kind of, again, it's kind of unclear, and I assume maybe we will find out more as the show progresses. There is kind of a question about whether it's meant to be a godlike character or a devil-like character, kind of good or evil. Was it intentional to make it ambiguous as to which way people would perceive that?
I go back to what I said earlier. This was meant to be a 10-minute film. So I thought, right, I'm going to be doing a 10-minute film. I better give it a kind of punchline. And I thought, right, so the punchline of Jimmy's End is, this won't surprise you, he's really dead. This is some sort of anteroom to the afterlife, and Mr. Metterton and Mr. Matchbright are respectively kind of God and the devil, which is actually kind of a bit lame, but and a bit obvious. But we were asked when we'd done the first, when I'd written Jimmy's End, we were asked by some of the first people we spoke to, can you possibly make this into perhaps a film and then a television series? And I said, no, because we give it all away at the end of the first little 10-minute thing. He's dead, this is God, this is the devil, you can't really go anywhere after that. And then I thought, maybe, well, after having said no, my vanity was stung, and I thought, well, if I really am the greatest human being that has ever lived, then I should be able to think my way around that. So I thought, what if they weren't God and the devil? What if they were just two very, very naughty boys who were pretending to be God and the devil? For what reasons would someone pretend to be God or the devil? And it went on from there until I came up with a scenario that was nothing like the original one, but included the original one. So we didn't have to change, it meant no rewriting on Jimmy's End, basically. Yeah. So it's, yeah, and Mr. Metterton, well, everybody in this film, to a certain degree, at least the people that we knew when we started writing it, I mean, Robert Goodman, the actor, he actually is as unpleasant as that, and that's not a prosthetic face. And you know,
dear friend.
yeah, a very, very dear friend. And so we tried to write around the characters, with the obvious exception of Mr. Metterton, who is an evil megalomaniac. So for that I was kind of acting against type, but I reached down inside myself and I kind of pulled that part out, you know.
I think it's probably time now to turn to Andrew and talk about Bubbles the Clown.
Do we have to?
Yes.
Why do you think that we have such a fear of clowns, especially on screen? What kind of drew you to want to play a clown?
I don't really know why we have a fear of clowns. A lot of people do, don't they? I suppose because they're supposed to make you laugh, they're supposed to be innocent, they're supposed to be a figure of fun, and they just do look so terrifying, don't they? I don't know. I mean, what drew me to this? I mean, when I first met Mitch, I was asked by Pete Coogan to come along and meet you, and I'd worked with Pete a few years before on a kids' TV
Pete's
show.
our producer, by the way.
Yeah, Pete's our producer. A kids' TV show for a co-production between Disney and the Henson Company. When me and Ed, a friend of mine, played a sort of a Laurel and Hardy, a very friendly sort of Laurel and Hardy double act with these little Jim Henson fluffy bunny rabbits. So when Pete phoned me up and sent over the script for His Heavy Heart, I thought, this is, you know, something different. And it was just a joy from beginning to end, really, you know.
So was the look of Bobbles already agreed, or did you have some input into that? How do you want your clown to look?
Well, my other half is the hair and makeup designer, so she spoke to Mitch. Did you send over the reference picture of...
We sent over a picture.
Yes.
And it was just a starting point. And the thing is, people like Susie and everyone who's been involved, it's a totally collaborative relationship we all have. And a good idea is a good idea. There isn't any real hierarchy. But apart from that, there is, we were sort of like all after the same thing. So it's a case of just letting her just get on with it, and then she really created Bubbles.
I mean, there were endless nights of me sitting in the kitchen being painted up as a clown, essentially.
They kept sending me photographs.
There are obviously kind of iconics in the clowns. I'm thinking from It. If anyone's watching the current American Horror Story, you had Twisty the Clown, which I think is going to go down in people's nightmares in the future. Was it hard to kind of not reference them, to try and have a unique looking clown that kind of didn't then remind people of something that had gone before?
Well, I hope that's what we've got. That's why we only sent over one reference. It was like probably the first picture I found on Google Images of the clown. I thought, yeah, that's all right. But, you know, it was down to Susie just to go on and create what she wanted, you know, with Andrew.
I mean, we had the notion at one point of creating the clown's makeup, apart from the red dot on the nose, the blood red of the lips and the eye colouring is a sort of a bruised colour. So there was one idea to create the clown's makeup essentially to look like bruising and cuts and injury, essentially. Yeah, that was possibly idea number one of about 500. So.
Okay, thank you. Just moving to some of the questions we've had from the audience now, and this also ties into a question I was going to ask myself. From Matty Bruns, we have the question, how unique is the film to Northampton, or is every place just as weird? And so, was it important to set it there as opposed to say London or America or somewhere else?
It was certainly important to set it somewhere other than London or America, because you kind of could get the impression impression from most media that there's only like one country or two countries in the entire world, and that they only have one city each. Whereas we're kind of inbred regional lads, and the idea that culture stops at Watford has always been a bit of an anathema to me. So, could it be anywhere? Is everywhere as weird as Northampton? In theory, I would like to say yes. That everywhere, if you're prepared to investigate it enough, that you will probably find things just as weird as we've found in Northampton. In actuality, no, you won't. No, seriously. You know, the stuff that we've got in Northampton, it's completely ridiculous. I found out where the first dark satanic mill was built the other day. It's under a railway bridge just at the bottom of Tanner Street. This was where the start of the Industrial Revolution happened. And the first power mill in the world. So, yeah, Industrial Revolution. And then a little bit later, a group of businessmen, that's when it's been turned into a cotton mill. And then Adam Smith, the gentleman on the £20 note, turns up and thinks, oh, cotton looms, all working without anybody to really handle them or anything. That's like a big invisible hand governing things, isn't it? Oh, that'll make a good metaphor for free market capitalism. So, yeah, we invented industry and capitalism, and we were the last to stop burning witches, as far as I know. We take some going to actually beat Northampton in the weirdness stakes, but you're welcome to try.
Kevin Chat from Twitter has asked, what was the inspiration to explore the afterlife? Because obviously it's not just about kind of religion, it's then taking that slightly further into kind of what's after we die.
Well, originally the urge to explore the afterlife was a kind of a cheap payoff at the end of Jimmy's End, when it turned out that they got him the devil. But after we'd abandoned that, we were thinking, well, this is still some sort of afterlife, obviously. So I was thinking about dreams, and I was thinking about the fact that the Greeks, as far as I know, regarded the world of the dead and the world of dreams as the same place. Because, after all, that is the only place where you meet people who are dead. It's a barely kind of logical assumption. So we were thinking, well, could we play with that idea? What if we had a kind of a dream world that was also where certain people ended up when they died? Yet we have got a reason for all of this. It's not like Lost, you know. This is all worked out. We've got the end scene already sort of in our heads. Yeah, you know, those aspects, they're a big part of it, and they will be developing very definitely.
Okay, thank you. Just turning back to you, Del, Blair James has asked, the metal gag scene was quite significant in length. As an actor, how did you cope with filming that intense scene?
It started to cut into my mouth a bit.
Within a couple of minutes?
Yeah, there were 3 to start with. There was a selection, and the gag wasn't actually made. So I was given this box, and Mitch kind of stood there and said, "So, which one do you fancy?" And there was one that was like a sort of thick ring that had the straps on it, and then there was the actual gag that's sort of like it's like a clamp, and it opens up and then it locks. So I actually fashioned the gag I took the straps off the ring one and then put them on the clamp thing and then wished that I hadn't. But it was, I mean, we were talking about this, it was quite, the first day, after having that in for a whole day, and him screaming at me and being stuck in that chair, I did start to feel a bit vulnerable in the dark. And later on, it wasn't the most pleasant prop I've ever worked with.
I've certainly never felt the same pressure to get my lines right.
Was it something that you maybe, did you take it away when you actually, you kept it as a souvenir of the film?
You'll have to find out.
Okay, thank you. Just asking the actors this actually, I know that you're also in another short film that we're showing in the festival called The Nostalgics, which is in our Sci-Fi Shorts programme on Tuesday. How important for all of you is it to appear in short films? How important are short films and kind of the camera work as opposed to television or feature films?
I've always had a brilliant experience in working in short films, and a couple of features that I've done have begun life as short films, and I think it's a really valuable way of giving people a taste of what that bigger world may be, and exploring a story that could be a longer, bigger story in a shorter amount of time, really. I think there's a lot more freedom to just do weird shit in shorts.
And it's a challenge as well to see how much you can fit into a brief. The nostalgia stand might appear for 45 seconds. But it's how much you can fit into that little moment. And it's a different discipline, I think, than being along. You spend 2 months making a film.
Yeah, and it generally, because it's more people kind of cutting their teeth, do you know what I mean? It's like, not always, but just kind of like experimenting and kind of, you have my brain is just gone. But you have like, you get to try out things, and you get to, experiment with the director, you get to kind of like, I don't know, it is different to doing a big feature film. It's more intense, and it's also kind of more intense but more relaxed at the same time. You're trusted more. Which sounds like an awful thing to say, but as in like everyone, all the teams from across the board depend on each other in a short film more so than in a big feature film, because it is such an intense period, and you have this bonding thing, and I just love it. I love the medium of short films, and I'll always like read a short film script if I've sent it. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this.
How was the process different from writing for a graphic novel? And do you think you could possibly branch into other medium in the future, maybe animation or even theatre?
Well, actually, that Mr. Hodge thing that you saw in Jimmy's End, with the guy falling down the steps and his brain falling out, like everything else in Jimmy's End, it's all fully written. So I've already written there's a complete Mr. Hodge half-hour episode. Mr. Hodge the movie, basically. That's already written. We've got our brilliant animating illustrator, who I think is already gagging to start work on it. I mean, I would be. I mean, it was interesting because if I do my illegible, tiny little drawings with bits of dialogue for a comics page, then when I've got to 24 pages of illegible scribble, then I know pretty much exactly what the comic's going to look like. I know that in the hands of a capable artist, that this panel will look like this is what the dialogue, I can imagine the whole thing. It's different with film. With film, you're more putting in a kind of a ground plan. And with the awareness that everybody will build upwards from that plan, but they'll all be adding their own individual talents, they'll be extending it, and yeah, so in that way it's very, very different to the comic process because so many people are involved and there are two ways of doing that. You can either be completely autocratic and just tell everybody what they're going to do, which is, to my mind, a bit stupid, because all of these people have got talents. They've often got abilities that you don't know about. Why not let them, like Mitch said, a good idea is a good idea. Why not let them bring their ideas to it? And this is true of every stage of the process. In the comics industry, there are a couple of very good editors. Most of them could not define the verb edit. That is different in films. The editing process is a lot more intense, and we've got the remarkable Colin Gowdy, who was the guy who edited on Monsters, the film that was set in Mexico with all of the giant bug things. It was a brilliantly cheap movie that looked and sounded fantastic. But Colin was the person who put all that together. And yeah, watching him work, you realise that everybody, you know, Mitch, all of the actors, Adam and Andy who were doing the sound, all the music for us. I'm quite proud of all the music in the film. There's going to be, when the thing comes out, the box set, there will be actually a CD of all of the music, and we've got some brilliant people on there. There's like Tunde Adebimpe from TV on the Radio, doing that Queen of Midnight song. There's Nona from Dark, 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 and Alan Sparhall, all of the Hamas Superstar. These are real kind of cutting edge people from, just people who work with Lex or who work with Adam and Andy. It's like every aspect of the film. We've sort of, working on this film is expanding into other media in itself because we've got so many things embedded within the concept. It's kind of spring-loaded so that it will kind of just erupt in people's faces. There's all these things. There's a computer game, Escapism, that is embedded within the concept of the film. There is Electric Comics, which I thought, in one of the scenes from the feature film, what would be great is if you had these kids and they're reading a comic on a device that doesn't exist. It's like a big flexible screen and it's a new sort of comic and it's called Electric Comics. And then we actually thought, I wonder if you could actually import that into the real world. If you could export it from the imagination. Anyway, we're at the Thought Bubble Convention tomorrow. I believe Mitch and Leah are going to be there. And yeah, this is a real thing. This is actually starting to be a problem because I embedded loads of ideas into this thing, mainly to impress people with how clever and creative I am. And now I'm having to actually work on them, and it's horrible.
You mentioned music there. One of the questions that we have from Tom Evans on Twitter, just asking, is the Alan Sparhawk credit on the extras the guy from Low?
Yes.
First of all, so yes, it is. But could you just tell us a little bit more about the process with the music? Because again, that's a very interesting way in the way that developed. Because I understand you wrote all the lyrics initially, and then looked for musicians to actually work with. Is that right?
Well, what happened was that I originally, when I thought, right, I'm making a film, so I should start being like a really eccentric movie business figure and start issuing lots of weird ultimatums, and so I said, right, I'm going to go a bit dogma here, you know, so we're going to have no non-diegetic music. And I mainly said that because I just wanted to have people sort of look at me nervously and blankly and say,
And it confused me.
yeah, it really confused him, and that was worth it just in itself alone. But I mean, what we thought, we didn't want any non-diegetic music, which is music that the people in the film can't hear. So diegetic music, that's music on a jukebox, music on a radio, the people in the film can hear it too. But the music that they play when someone's going down the cellar of a creepy old house to see what that noise was, he's not supposed to be able to hear that, otherwise he'd know that there was something horrible. It's obvious, really. So we thought, all right, no non-diegetic stuff. That means we're going to have to hire a lot of music to have on the radio or on jukeboxes, and we're a bit tight in many respects. That sounded like it would cost a lot of money and wouldn't be a lot of fun. So I thought, why don't we just steal everything? Why don't I think of a song that we'd like to use, and then I'll write completely new lyrics that have got some of the atmosphere retained, but are not legally actionable.